Welcome to the How to Governance podcast by the Into-Site Development Initiative, or IDI. The How to Governance podcast aims to look at the road ahead for public sector governance and the implications for supreme audit institutions, in short, SAIs. In the podcast, we will explore important and upcoming governance topics and new developments, together with exciting guests from and beyond the SAI community. I'd like to emphasize that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent. My name is Defina Dimitrova and I'm a senior manager at the IDI's governance department. In our second episode dedicated to sustainability reporting, we will turn our attention to the SAI experience in this upcoming governance field. I will be speaking to the Deputy Auditor General of South Africa, Mr. Vunani Chauke, who will share with us the sustainability reporting journey of his institution and will demonstrate how SAIs can be at the forefront of this crucial new area in public sector governance. Mr. Chauke, so nice to have you with us. For our audience and viewers, could you please introduce yourself to begin with?
Good morning, Davina. As you mentioned, my name is Bonani Chauke. I am the Deputy Auditor General of SAI South Africa. I'm looking forward to this engagement today. So to you and to your viewers, I'm looking forward to have a lovely day.
Really great to have you with us. The topic of sustainability reporting, it is definitely one that has gained so much traction, but mainly from a private sector perspective over the last years. And then again, there are some SAIs, including the SAI of South Africa, who have been really paving and leading the way when it comes to sustainability reporting, both in terms of your audit work and in terms of your own performance. And to begin with, to the benefit again of our audience, I'm wondering, could you reflect a little bit of why is it important actually for a Supreme Audit institution to reflect, to incorporate, to consider performance issues, but also from a sustainability perspective in their reports and in their work?
Thanks, Davina, for that question. So you are correct in terms of saying that ESG has been very prominent, especially in the private sector in the past few years. But to answer your question, let me first unpack what sustainability means, especially in the context of SI. In my understanding, sustainability means the taking care of the environment, social and governance matters. That is why the ESG principle. Then it becomes easier to answer your question. The environmental aspect covers a typical size performance in respect of the ecological system, meaning how on our own way are we conducting our business as a supreme audit institution is impacting the environment in which we all coexist. The social aspect relates to the way we manage our relationship with stakeholders that form part of our value chain, i.e. our employees, our suppliers. In our case, we use a number of contract audit firms to assist us to deliver on some of our audits. Also, our auditees and oversight. In a South African context, the professional bodies and the regulatory body, as well as the general citizens of the country. On the governance aspect, which is the G in the ESG, is the aspect of sustainability deals with matter of internal controls, decision-making, and assurance of the work that we do. Now, let me come back to your question. Why is it important to report on sustainability matter? Definitely, being aware of all the aspects that impact our work allow us to better manage our risk, make us aware of the cost optimization and saving opportunities that can enhance our decision-making processes, which altogether leads to improved confidence in the work of the National Audit Office, as well as to augment the reputation of SAI in terms of practices and what we preach. Let me give you a very simple example. Every time when an auditor decides to visit a site to verify evidence provided by the auditee, that auditor uses natural resources, most often fuel. Hence, a natural resource is being depleted. And in addition, the quality of the air worsened due to the emission of carbon that will have been incurred as part of driving to that particular site. Admittedly, These are small impact per one audit. Multiply this by a number of audits and by the number of years, and you start observing a noticeable impact.
Mm.
Dafina, based on the previous example I've just given now, knowing how this will have an impact on the environment help us in a number of ways. As I mentioned earlier, the cost associated with the travel can be minimized by combining travel events by choosing the best possible travel plan and means of transportation. If we develop this simple example further, we can become aware of the impact and the desire to minimize cost. You know that the pairs of most size are almost very light. In our case, we don't have much, so we are forced to look into our cost optimization strategies. For example, we can better station our audit teams geographically, or we can outsource a specific audit to an audit firm that is closer to the auditee to lessen the cost of an audit by the auditee traveling to that particular location. Furthermore, given the latest technological development, we could decide to employ drones to inspect construction sites or roads or other massive public resources instead of sending audit teams to the site. The result of using drones is not only decreasing the carbon emission, but significantly reduction in the cost of doing the audit. This clear link between the reduction of the environmental impact and the financial sustainability of SI cannot be overemphasized. Having sufficient funds to operate effectively increases the chance of SI being much more impactful and to report better on the transparency and the use of public resources. While remaining independent is a critical strategic priority of all sides, in most cases, we have noticed that many national audit offices operate under significant budget constraints, whether because their budget are insufficient or they cannot secure funding, or in extreme cases, because funds are deliberately withheld in order to limit the effectiveness of a sign.
And I think this is very interesting because what you're saying is that sustainability and knowing about the environmental impact of our work is basically very much about efficiency, and it helps an SAI to operate better, especially under circumstances of resource limitations and even circumstances where independence is impeded, right?
Definitely, Dafina. And I think we are getting this example. I'm glad that I use a very basic example to just demonstrate this massive impact, because over time it's got the impact. So what I was building on was also the fact that if we decide how we can use our resources, put them closer to the site, but also the impact of having our staff stay at a central location where they might have to travel very early in the morning, spend lots of time on the road, it also might have an impact on their own health and safety. So it's important to think about these things holistically. And some of these decisions, if you make them connecting the dot, it becomes easier to see the impact of our resources. So that is where the social aspect come in. And I'm glad that you have re-emphasized the manner in which we need to do our work in an efficient manner. So on the example that I've just shared now, it talks about the safety of our people, the wellness of our people, and quality of life of our people. On the other hand, we'll be achieving efficiencies by being able to deploy technology where we can, or using the most appropriate resource, even if it means that we have to use a subcontractor or DT who's close to the site that we need to do. Overall, our employees will feel that we care, and they will remain loyal to the organization. They will share their experiences, which in turn increase the reputation of AGSA as an employer of choice. A number of years in the past few years, we have been voted as the employer of choice in the public sector. And I think this is because of the practices that we employ as an organization. With this example, we have demonstrated how the consideration of the environment led to improvement in the design of our audit. It also had an impact on our cost optimization. It improved the well-being of our staff. In addition, our risk management and strategic decision-making has been impacted by all this thinking and us connecting the dots as far as this is concerned. The technological solution in this case also resulted in an enhanced quality of audit and consequently an enhanced audit opinion. The role of the National Audit Office in respect of sustainability management does not end with its own performance, in this case, our performance. It goes into the core of the audit work. The environmental audits conducted by SAIS deal with the disclosure of environmental assets and liabilities, compliance, and national or international legislation and convention, the implementation and the effects of environmental policies and programs. The measures that we have instituted as the audit entity to promote the economical, efficient, and effective use of our resources. In the case of AGSA, our material irregularity findings in this respect have already triggered adequate action by some accounting officers that led to the improvement of the lived realities of our citizens. After all, this is what the SAI stands for, to deliver value and benefits to citizens. This, though, is a separate topic on its own and it receives its own deserved attention. I would love to talk to you about this one day because what I just explained now, the SAI South Africa has got new powers where if you feel that there is action that is causing harm to our citizens, we can issue what we call a material irregularity. And there has been instances where we have seen where our citizens were placed at harm's way, and we have issued material irregularities. For another day, we can talk more about it. For today, let's keep it as far as the sustainability topic is concerned. Back to you, Daphne.
Thank you so much for giving us this very good and very solid explanation of what sustainability really means in the context of your SAI. And thank you for unpacking this admittedly very complex topic, right? But I also want to say that indeed making always the link to the benefits to the lives of citizens is so important because this is what an SAI stands for. This is what it aims to achieve, right? And sustainability is such an important part of that because it means being there for the generations to come as well, right? I am now wondering though, you are one of the pioneers, if I may say so, when it comes to sustainability reporting. How did you actually decide? How did the AGSA decide to report on sustainability matters?
So, Davina, we are going back many years when it comes to reporting on sustainability matters. Credit has to be given to the past three auditor generals that led this process from the front. The first auditor general that I want to give credit to is former AG Terence Nombembe, who promoted the theme of environmental auditing and sustainable development during the 20th INCOSAI that was held in South Africa, Johannesburg, in 2010. The Congress highlighted the important role SAIS can play in auditing national and global environmental and sustainable governance through implementation of multilateral environment agreements. And I think that set the foundation in terms of the focus, because besides just auditing, we also have to reflect internally as to what role do we play. And secondly, now late AG Kimima Kwetu, in his role as the Deputy Auditor General at the time, he recognized the importance of demonstrating that SAI South Africa is indeed a responsible corporate citizen and authorized the strategy business unit to compile the organizational first annual report for the financial year 2011-2012. That included disclosures on environmental and social matters. The Global Reporting Initiative, the GRI framework, was the chosen vehicle to make such disclosures. Given the early stage of this work, as well as the relative low impact of our work on the environment, we chose the GRI core options and never looked back since then. It has been a lovely journey following this particular framework to assist us to report on the way forward. One will ask, but why the GRI? At the time we did our homework and reviewed other existing standards and framework, some were very industry and country specific. Others were topic specific, such as Carbon Disclosure Project, the CPD, or they were relating too much to the financial aspect of the corporate social responsibility. And we were looking to satisfy stakeholders versus other stakeholders. Ultimately, we were also too onerous for the small reporting team that the AGSA had at the time. And we're looking to increase our disclosure on the sustainability matters, but at no extra cost, but also looking into the fact that we didn't have much experience. It was a difficult process, but we ended up deciding that the GRI framework offered us the best framework in which we could report, because it was a voluntary standard that was already accepted by many organizations throughout the world. It was flexible to serve our need, but also to meet our requirement in terms of the various stakeholders that we have to report to. Very importantly, though, for those working in the public sector, it helped us to cover a large number of topics that were relevant to us.
It is very interesting what you're explaining in terms of how you chose the GRI standard. And in fact, in our previous episode with our previous guest, who is a sustainability expert from SIPFA, one of the topics that we discussed when we were talking about the general landscape and developments around sustainability reporting in the public sector is that there is a lack of one overarching standard framework that fits really the public sector context, which is admittedly somewhat different than the private sector. And it is really interesting to see how you went through that journey and how you chose for a standard and it fit your purpose. And I think that is definitely something that many SAIs can also learn from. But you were taking us down memory lane.
Yes, but I think to just reconfirm, it's important that when we start something, you don't overwhelm yourself with a very complicated framework. And I think the choice of a framework is important to ensure that, as we say in where I come from in South Africa, before you can walk, you must crawl. And I think at the time, it was a fit for purpose framework for our purposes. And sometimes people want to benchmark themselves with a more established organization. And in the process, we are not able to meet the requirements. So I think credit to the team at that stage that was here before my time. I think that they made the right call in terms of what was fit for purpose. And I think my advice to other side is that when benchmarking themselves to other areas, they need to look into those that have already walked the journey and understand why are they doing certain things, because things do evolve. And as and when you mature enough, you can then change the framework to go to one that covers the needs of that particular case. So I think a critical part was that it was our first implementation. And at that stage, the framework was appropriate for us. Mm-hmm. So going back to our journey, then the third Auditor General who made a contribution to this part is our current Auditor General, Ms. Tsakani Maluleke. From the start of her tenure as well, when she was still Deputy Auditor General in 2014, she provided support and resources to our strategy business unit to enhance the AGSA reporting by adhering to the full requirement of the International Integrated Reporting Framework. So you see, well, we started by crawling, now we're ready to walk. Mm-hmm. And we're bringing the right resources into the organization to allow us to do exactly just that. For those that might not have come across the IR framework, this is a comprehensive corporate reporting framework across the full range of enterprise value drivers and standards to drive global sustainability performance. The primary purpose of an integrated report is to explain how an organization creates, preserve, or erode value over time. As such, it contains relevant information, both financial and non-financial, which put together a comprehensive picture about the reporting entity. A comprehensive picture of an entity is a basis for decision-making by stakeholders that are interested in that entity. The IR framework allows us to make further disclosures about the way we create value. This offered us a link to the INTOSAI P12 principles. In order to align our reporting obligation arising from the provision of our governing legislation, which is the Public Auditors Act of 2004 in South Africa, and with the firm commitment of the AGSA leadership to make other relevant disclosures, our strategy business units find a way to satisfy the various requirements of both the GRI and other frameworks. The simple premise of alignment was that the AGSA ultimately exists to create value for its stakeholders, which is inherent in our strategic objective and business strategies. Definitely, the successful implementation of our business strategy leads to value creation. And if we seek to report on the ability of our organization to create and sustain value, then our reporting framework has to meet both the GRI G4, and also the integrated reporting requirements. The GRI framework continued to be the acceptable framework for sustainable reporting. However, the AGSA annual report was enhanced to fully comply with all the relevant requirements of the integrated reporting framework as well, which on our basis to classify our report as an integrated report. So let me put it in a simple manner. I explained to you the journey that we took in terms of when we started, we were basing our reporting framework on the GRI. And while the GRI met our initial requirements and fulfilled our desire to report on sustainability, when we started to mature and we had more resources at our disposal, thanks to the investment that was made by AGSA, we felt that combining the GRI framework as well as the full integrated reporting framework will enable us to have a comprehensive report that will help us to show in the manner in which SAI South Africa was creating and maintaining value. So I do hope that clarified a little bit more.
And so you crawled, first you crawled, and now you're walking, right? That's how it
definitely
came to be.
now walking, and soon we'll run,
Absolutely.
Incidentally, and with pride, I want to share that our integrated annual report has already won twice the award for the best integrated report in the public sector category in South Africa. We compile our report ourselves without the use of consultant. It is purely an AGSA product. So when you talk about us working, I think at this stage you can clearly demonstrate that we are running, as evidenced by us having won a number of awards as far as our integrated report is concerned. While we receive acknowledgement from our oversight structures, the Standing Committee on the Auditor General, which is called SCOEC, the committee that we report to into Parliament, at this stage of our reporting and on sustainability is mostly used as an example for other organizations in the public sector. Most people use the AGSA report to see what is best practice, and most are adopting that. We also support Afro-SAI effort in promoting integrated and sustainability reporting amongst African SAIs. I do hope that the journey which I've painted clearly demonstrated the manner in which we went through crawling, through just complying with the GRI framework. And when we were ready and having the appropriate resources, we then brought the full integrated reporting framework into play. And our effort and the success thereof has been acknowledged by us having won awards. So I do think at this stage we are running. We are not at the stage where we're going to sit back and relax. We're still pursuing and reviewing manner in which we're going to enhance our reporting. Thanks, Davina.
Thank you very much. And this is very impressive indeed. It also shows that it takes some time, that it is not a process and it is not something that you can just take and incorporate 1 year to the next. As everything, it takes efforts, right? And you need to build up your knowledge and your expertise. We know what sustainability is. You explained it to us. You gave us some examples. Our audience at this point, I'm sure, is wondering, how do you actually report on those matters? When you take the report, what do you find in there? What is the process behind it?
So the answer is easy, because you only report on what you have done. So before we start reporting, we plan for our sustainability performance. Most importantly, our business strategy includes all aspects of sustainability. A few years ago, the prevailing thinking and the best practice was for organizations to have a standalone sustainability strategy. But with the advancement of concept of integrated thinking and reporting, the defined element of sustainability were extended from the initial concept of the triple bottom line, which was people, planet, and profit, to the concept of organizational capitals, meaning the financial capital, human capital, social and relational, intellectual and manufactured, and lastly, natural capital. What helped us when we do all this integrated thinking, we realize that then you bring ESG to the core of the business strategy. And that has helped our thinking in terms of this, that it was part of our business strategy development. What we did as SAI South Africa, we systematically and deliberately delve into the sustainable matters such as the develop, such as to develop deeper understanding and management of business capital. This allowed us to merge the business and sustainability strategies, thus creating one seamless organizational strategy based on the sustainability practices. Our business executive for strategy called this the holy grain of business management. Hence, we did away with our standalone sustainability strategy and embedded the sustainability principle for the first time in the creation of the implementation of our previous organizational strategy, which we called the 4V strategy, which it used to talk about value, visibility, viability, and vision, which ran from 2014, and we successfully concluded that particular strategy in the financial year ending 2022. The strategy had all these elements built into it. And when we develop our new strategy, which we currently call Culture Shift 2030, it was also embedded in that new strategy. Our culture shift strategy is aimed at causing a shift in the public sector culture such that it leads to sustained, consistent, and meaningful improvement in the lived reality of ordinary South Africans. We use the insight resulting from our audits, our power of influence, and when need be, we enforce using our powers that were given when the PAA was enhanced some few years ago to cause that shift. In summary, the sustainability reporting is simply a reflection of our work, driven by our strategy that is based on sustainability principle. In addition, to report on our performance against predetermined objectives, we report extensively on the management of human capital, remuneration practices, corporate social investment, supplier development, ethics, governance, and many other material matters. So you will see that by planning these things in the beginning of the strategy development, we cover various aspects which are important for us as an organization to demonstrate that we lead by example. And it becomes part and parcel of our DNA. And I do want to thank the team that has been helping us to think about this, not as a standalone matter, but as an integrated subject matter as part of the strategy implementation.
And thank you. And I really couldn't underscore this element more. The importance of integrated and holistic thinking that starts already when developing the strategy, right? We, in our work, have definitely seen many examples in which SAIs tend to have separate strategies for each and every separate aspect within the organization, and of course, even broader ones, such as sustainability. What it often leads to is then fragmentation and difficulty to understand what is the priority. But when we are at the level of sustainability, these are so fundamental questions that affect, as you have also very well explained, the whole of the organization and beyond. They affect the type of value it delivers to citizens. So it only makes sense to me personally, and I hope also to our audience, that these should be integrated within the strategy, right? And that this really then, of course, leads to better and easier, I guess, integrated sustainability reporting. Could we take some examples from the report, and that can make our understanding a bit easier in terms of what actually we can find in there?
That's perfectly fine, Dafina. I think let's discuss the social dimension of the GRI G4 standard. It deals with the impact that an organization has on the social system within which it operates, such as labor practices and decent work, human rights, and within this, and also the impact on the society and other stakeholders. Most of the content in this subcategory is based on international recognized universal standards or other relevant international references. In respect of our stakeholders, I would like to share some few examples on what we report on. So in our case, we disclose our approach for identifying stakeholders. There are 3 steps that we follow. We first analyze the needs of each stakeholders. We then develop an action plan for each stakeholder group within the stakeholder categories. We engage with the stakeholders and then monitor the impact to that particular stakeholder. We are able to then prioritize the stakeholders, and this enables us to deliver customized messages linked to the stakeholders' mandate and the AGSA needs. Then this helps us to identify specific mandate aligned to the actions that we need to do and the intended objectives. I know it sounds a bit complex, but all that it is that you need to understand the stakeholder and the impact that you want to have on that particular stakeholder. It could be a broad society, but if we zoom into what impact do we need to make, then it becomes easier to have specific plans that will impact that particular stakeholder. We then disclose the reasons to engage with each one of them, such as a stakeholder that we have selected as part of our audit approach, or a stakeholder that we might have picked up during the COVID-19 that had a specific focus on dispersing COVID-19 disaster funds, or management of funds for the vaccines on behalf of the citizens. Lastly, we could pick one regarding the status of the records review and preventative controls. We disclose this result for those engagement per stakeholder, and the stakeholder can then understand and have a theme in terms of what is the impact that they are making to the society. Having used the example about COVID, we all still remember the impact of COVID, where most developing countries really struggle to get COVID early enough. And when they finally got the COVID stock being rolled out, we were in the forefront in terms of reporting on those, in terms of what is the penetration, how many people are being vaccinated, and all those things. So our report assists in terms of helping society assess what has been done. And the stakeholders can then use our report to see as to what is the impact that has been done by their action at that particular stage. In our case, in South Africa, our report that we disclose enable our stakeholders to better engage with society. The select committee or the appropriation committees develop a keen interest in our work by summoning provincial leaders in the finance, such as the mayor and also municipality managers, to come and account on poor project management around some of these areas that we're reporting upon. We believe that work goes a long way to ensure that we are able to enhance the reporting capability of our stakeholders. In respect of the management of our own human capital, we disclose everything from the composition and distribution of our workforce. Good enough for a site like us, we have a fairly young generation. Most of us are the older one, and we do indicate the spread of the young force, the older people, the contractual relationships that we've got, the variation and movement of the workforce. We also demonstrate the diversity, equality, and also fairness. As an institution that we are proud to see ourselves as a training institution, we also report on the education and qualification, the training and the bursary support that we give to our employees and to the students to ensure that we impact our profession. We have programs that seek to address some of the previous imbalances that existed within South Africa. And we have got specific programs that talk to the rural school program, where we support schools in previously disadvantaged background. We also have got support for universities that were previously not allowed to offer what is a critical qualification within the audit profession in South Africa, which we call Certificate in Theory of Accounting. And we have partnered with a number of institutions that is aiming to build a pipeline where they will be able to get the necessary accreditation to offer those qualifications. And that allows us to properly report on that. Furthermore, we report on our remuneration practices. And lastly, we also report, as far as the staff part is concerned, around any disciplinary cases, our employee wellness, any injuries that occurred at work, any other safety measures. Given the kind of work that we do, sometimes our people are unfortunately subjected to some threats, and it's a matter that we take seriously. And if there are any threats, we do make sure that we report appropriately. And lastly, we demonstrate our fair labor practice.
The social dimension is both about the external stakeholders, engaging with them, the communication, the messaging around them, around also shared objectives, but it is also very much about your own staff. And how do you make sure that you build the human capital within the organization, right? Is my understanding correct?
Understanding is correct. So is twofold. So we use our audit involvement to also bring this to report about the broader society, but internally as well, we hold ourselves responsible to ensure that our stakeholders, being our staff, can see what we are doing because they're a critical stakeholder. So on the example that I've mentioned, if you read our reports, you will see that we have made significant progress in terms of the impact that we've made to produce chartered accountants in the country. But it's important to acknowledge that while we are making that progress, where since the establishment of our CA training program, we've been able to train and produce over 1,800 new CAs. A person needs to understand the context of where we come from and the impact that has made to transforming the accounting profession. And us having shared those information, it has led to people realizing that you don't have to only go to the Big Four to qualify as a chartered accountant.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually come and do work within a site environment, and you stand as good, if not a better chance of qualifying. So while the reporting helps you to account to the society at large, it also helps to show that you are preserving value. And that is the thinking. People sometimes want to only report on those things where they've succeeded, but sometimes also being able to account for the things where you have not made enough success, it helps you to reflect as to how can we better make this program succeed. And I think if we approach this reporting on that basis, we will show that where you have set certain target and you're not meeting them, it helps you to refine the strategies that you can implement to ensure that you achieve your goal. If you don't report on something, then you will not be aware about the success, or in some cases where you need to improve on your strategies to achieve your goal. So on the internal part, that's what we do. On the first part, which I've said, we also report on things when we do our work, but we put a lens on how we report to ensure that the ordinary citizens can hold government to account, but also allowing the portfolio committees and the oversight structures to be able to easily understand our report and read it with the lens of the social impact.
Mm-hmm. And yes, reports they're not just an accountability tool, they're so much a learning tool, right? And I just want to emphasize once again what you mentioned. It is so important to include also those areas where maybe there is still some room for improvement, because all organizations are learning organizations, especially in the public sector, right? Nobody is perfect. But I think it's very much part of the role of the SAI to lead by example, right? Also in maybe showing a little bit of vulnerability or a little bit of opportunity to get even better at their game, right?
We took a deliberate decision to support the emerging small firms. So part of the model that we use is we do the bulk of our work ourselves, but it's not possible for us to cover all the audits. And in the past, we used to partner with the established audit firms. But we realized that to make an impact to the transformation of the audit profession in South Africa, it will be important for us to have a deliberate plans to assist the small emerging firms. We took steps to support these firms. We started with just 2. And over the years, we have grown to a significant number of over 20 of them, where some of them are becoming to be much more sizable practices. The reporting thereof has helped us to indicate where we were not moving with speed. But now we're at the stage that we're saying, is it a matter of the numbers growing, or now there's a need to consolidate? And this forces you to have a different conversation with your stakeholder. Yesterday, we had a meeting where we were engaging with this particular stakeholder group. And a critical theme that was coming out of this was to say, maybe we need to change, instead of us focusing on the number of ESDs that we have assist to develop, it could be time for them to consolidate. And I think that will then allow them to not remain as emerging firms, but now to be bigger firms. And I think in our reporting, it's something that we might have to think about in the future to say, how do we report? Because it's not about the number of entities that we have assisted to start up, but it's also about the long-term sustainability of those entities. So the reporting can also force you to think differently. So maybe instead of us just worrying about how many jobs have you created, but to show the sustainability of this organization. And people sometimes shy away from reporting because it's time to account. But reporting should be the best time where you celebrate the successes that you have made, but also take stock of the areas where there's room for improvement.
We mentioned a little bit that it can be a bit challenging from time to time, right? And just this whole thinking as such is not necessarily always very straightforward, even though, of course, the value of it, I think it's undeniable for everybody that is listening to us. But I'm wondering, with so many aspects to consider, so many things that you can potentially report on. And you mentioned, of course, from the beginning, you report only on the things that you have planned and you have done, right? But are there some challenges that maybe you can share with us, and especially with those SAIs that are maybe contemplating to venture into sustainability reporting?
Indeed, I mean, reporting is not easy. It's not an easy matter at all. It's easy to report on the financial targets. You can go to the bank statement and see how much money you've got. Because one of the difficult part in some of this reporting is collection of the information, getting the reliable information. So information is owned by various subject matters throughout the whole organization. We need to be organized and aligned, guided on how to report, and also on the impact or the outcomes that we are trying to get. Because for us, it's not about the input, it's really about the output. And that sometimes becomes very difficult to always quantify. This is usually done in our case by our strategy team, but most of the information will be sitting with various people. So that coordination is quite a challenge. But over the years, we have been able to develop a system that we can trace who is the subject matter that will generally give us the correct information. And we have allocated members of the executive to drive various aspects of this reporting. At this stage, we are currently collecting this information, and we ensure that before we report it, it gets audited. So what we do for each line item, the subject matter expert will collate the information. It will be consolidated by our strategy team, and it will be subjected to an external auditor who will assure on that information. It's nice and good to say we have achieved 1, 2, 3, but if you cannot give assurance on that information, it's not reliable. So we do insist that the information that we publish, it is independently assured by an independent auditor. Currently, we do also appropriate management information system outside of our audit environment that allow us to pull all this information that we need together. We are, though, working on that, and I do hope that our digital transformation strategy will allow us to have most of this information at the click of a button.
Yes, and actually this interplay between sustainability and digitalization, I think it's one that is really coming out very strongly in our also conversations and our exploration of the topic. They really can go hand in hand, right? But information, availability, quality of the data, and assurance, I think these will be the big topics, right, for the future. And now, speaking about the future, though, what is your view? Where is what do you think is the future of sustainability reporting for SAIs specifically?
So I think beside our own hygiene system, SI, where we report, I think SIs have got an increasingly important role to play in delivering value and benefits to the citizens. What could be a bigger value or benefits than to contribute to the preservation of the planet, improving the use of natural public resources that secures the existence of humanity, the advancement of the sustainable development goals, and simple to a decent human life. In order for our generation coming after us to have a better world that we can live for them. So for the science, it's important then that we lead by example. So it's twofold. We need to report how we are impacting the environment as size. So it's important that we report responsibly. But through the work that we do, I believe that science can play a very important role by holding our stakeholders accountable in the manner in which they are conducting themselves. It is thus important that in our work and the audit that we do, we start reflecting more and more on the impact of the of the stakeholders' work on sustainability and report accordingly. SAIS needs to first and foremost believe in the concept of sustainability and that it is truly beneficial for the society, environment, and the organization to conduct yourself in a sustainable manner. SAIS that need to formulate their own strategies. They need to work with other SAIS to ensure that they are deliberate in terms of the strategies that they need to do. Intosai has a suite of training and guiding material around strategy development and strategic planning that can incorporate sustainability thinking as an integral part of that. I will encourage the SAIs to think along those lines. The strategy of a SAI needs to be aligned strongly with the principle of Intosai P12 on the value and benefits of a supreme audit institution, as well as the basic principle for sustainability. To ensure that the strategy is well executed, SAIs needs to put in place a monitoring system to collect information on all parameters that they intend to report on. I did share earlier that the collection of information is very difficult. So at the planning stage, it's important to also think at that stage to say, we want to report on this matter, but also put in place a monitoring system to say, how do we monitor this and how do we collect the information in the long run? And lastly, I think that once SAIs have selected their preferred reporting framework, which I shared our journey as SAIS South Africa, it will be beneficial to contact a partner that has already used a specific framework so that they can partner together and learn as they go together. It is important that we don't walk alone. And I'll encourage other SAIs to have a partner that has walked the journey ahead of them, or even have another one that they partner so that they work together, but have a mentor who have already gone through the development of that particular journey. All reputable international standards and framework have well-stocked websites that can provide ample guidance in terms of the reporting frameworks. Although it might be imperfect at the beginning, a SAI need to start disclosing as much information as they have. It is important to keep at it while getting better at understanding our own value creations as SAI. The material matters. In the case of AfroSci-E, we are running annual workshop dedicated to integrated reporting. These provide an immense opportunity to SAIs to engage on sustainable reporting in a company of like-minded colleagues. And as with any new thing, read a lot on the matter. Ask for help. Try and improve. Nothing will be perfect at the first start. Sustainability reporting will increase and possibly augment the scope of matters of interest. Just like with the use of financial capital or human resource capital, we will have to account for the use of every ounce of natural capital. We will have to account for the impact of our work on the environment and also on the lives of our citizens. SAIS South Africa will continue to consider all aspects regarding sustainability as an integral part of our strategy. In our performance assessment, we take pride in reporting the facts as they are, and where we need to improve, we will acknowledge that. And lastly, I would like to emphasize that where possible, it's important that we obtain independent assurance on the numbers that we are reporting on so that we can be held accountable. I hope this shapes the forward thinking, and I do hope that the advice about SAIS not working alone will be taken seriously, because I don't think you need to feel that you need to start on your own. There's been various stages that has been done. From us as SAIS South Africa, I'm very comfortable and would like to commit that my team would like to work with anyone. The strategy business unit really enjoyed this topic. Like I mentioned, they are working with the AfroSci-E to ensure that there are people that are talking about these things. And no matter where the people are in the journey, there's always something to learn from our peers. Thank you.
Vonani, thank you so much for sharing your predictions, your vision for the future. A lot of guidance for SAIs that are still very new to this journey. And also thank you so much for underscoring once again this key principle of the Intosai community, namely peer support. Walking together, as you said. This is really critical. This is what makes our community so special, I always think. And thank you as well for offering to help other SAIs and support them in that journey, which is a new one. It's a scary one, I think, for some SAIs, definitely, because it raises fundamental questions, but all the more important, of course, that it is tackled sooner rather than later. Thank you once again for sharing with us your views, your experience. We have truly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Delphina. We are definitely ready to share our practices, but most importantly, we are also looking forward to learn from other practices from our fellow SAIs. It has been a very lovely engaging with you. I do hope that your viewers will really enjoy this and will take this matter forward. Thank you.